studios. This is After 9 with Scott and Kat.
Hey now. Hi, friends. Welcome to another After 9. It is another solo Scott episode, but I promise you, Kat will be back on Thursday. Had some real great feedback, some good DMs. I'm having some great conversations on Instagram in particular. If you want to reach out, it's at Scott Fox on air. If I don't get back to you right away, it is simply because it probably went to my filtered messages, but I try and get those cleaned out once a week now at least. And you can weigh in on just about anything you hear here in After 9. Lots to get to in this edition, but first off, no, actually, you know what? We're going to do that in a few minutes. I'm going to call my mechanic. Maybe you woke up today the same as I did and thought, oh yeah, it's almost time to get those snow tires on again, isn't it? We'll find out when the time is to get snow tires on. Maybe it's right now. I don't know. We're going to call my longtime mechanic. I've been going to see this guy for years, and he's good. I recommend him, and he'll give you all the info you need. Let's start off with a couple of different things. Number one, it is a massive story that had a news conference in Ottawa yesterday and virtually no mainstream media news coverage. And I don't understand why. I don't understand why. For months, we've been chanting the same thing. Release the names. Who are the members of parliament or former candidates or senators or what have you that may have been compromised by foreign governments? Yesterday, we learned a couple of the names. Let me play you a little bit of this news conference that happened yesterday in Ottawa. This is just a little bit.
In Willful Blindness, I write about investigations that began in early 2019. I write, according to 3 national security sources, Liberal Cabinet Minister Mary Ng was identified in CSIS investigations as one of 11 Toronto area candidates clandestinely supported by Chinese consulate and United Front influence networks in the 2019 election. CSIS assessed that Mary Ng was unwittingly implicated in this interference network. Despite my requests, Mary Ng and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office never responded for comment. As I write in Willful Blindness, Mary Ng was one of the key Ontario Liberal government staffers who moved to Ottawa with Trudeau, alongside more high-profile advisors like Katie Telford and Gerald Butts. 2 national security sources indicated that a specific CSIS concern was Ng's staff allegedly meeting privately with a Toronto consulate diplomat to consult on China-related issues. CSIS identified this diplomat, Zhou Wei, as a confirmed intelligence actor. According to one source, quote, we believe Zhou Wei worked with political staffers to provide information on meetings of elected officials and their whereabouts. We know staff have direction to report privately to the consulate on Mary Ng, end quote. This is a critical detail hinted at in the Hogue Commission's initial report, which, for some reason, did not disclose the involvement of Mary Ng's staff with Zhou Wei or clarify what this implies about Ng's position in Trudeau.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. What the heck is going on here? This is a major thing, and I don't understand why this got almost no national news coverage yesterday. This was a press conference in Ottawa where they actually named names. But here's, we're going to get to you in a second here, Kevin. I don't understand why we have not had more coverage on this and more discussion on this. We also don't know all of the names. Only some of the names came out yesterday. Okay, if it's not the government releasing the names, how did they get the names? How did this reporter get the names? And where does MP Kevin Vaughn come into this? I'm going to play Kevin right now because he was at this news conference. I would have thought that having him there would lend enough credibility that the media would cover this, but nothing.
Nearly every opposition party leader has called for the names of the parliamentarians identified in the NSICOP report, but the Trudeau government refuses to do so. This plays directly into the hands of authoritarians. Until those names are identified, a cloud of suspicion hangs over all parliamentarians, but especially those of Chinese heritage. It's time for the government to come clean to Canadians and defend our democracy.
I mean, Yeah, there is a cloud of suspicion over all MPs until we know who the 13 are. I really don't understand why they haven't released these names. I can't think of why they wouldn't release those names. The government can release them just about any time. The Prime Minister has released some of his intelligence information in the House of Commons. I don't understand why they cannot do it in this scenario, or why they won't do it. If they're playing politics with something as serious as we have politicians and staffers, senators, elected individuals, former candidates that have been compromised by a foreign government, we, the people, have a real right to know that, to at least know what the accusations are and find out what next steps are and how this is going to play out. It seems like, and this was my suspicion all along, and it was confirmed in, I believe it was Sam Cooper was the reporter that was speaking first. I believe that what he said was the RCMP described Mary Ng as an unwitting collaborator. In other words, she didn't know. That's the way I interpret that. Okay, but we need to know this information, especially if someone was unwittingly involved. That's important that we know. What did they tell these people? What was the extent of working with a foreign entity? These are important questions that need to be answered, and I really, really hope that the politics end soon and we can start getting down to business in Ottawa. We need to know the names of those people that may have been compromised. And then we can make up our own minds. Hopefully, they give us enough information to know whether or not they were wittingly or unwittingly participating, whether or not they were volunteering information or they just happened to mistakenly give something up. We need to know the details because we need to be informed when we vote. And by the way, we may be voting sooner than later. Yesterday's deadline came and went, and Prime Minister Trudeau did not step down. His insistence that he is sticking around as party leader is now fueling calls for a secret ballot. It was a New Brunswick MP named Wayne Long that initially began this push to get the Prime Minister to step down. Now, Wayne still wants the PM to go, but he says he has no interest in blowing up the party or jamming up the government's agenda in the House of Commons, but he still does want the Prime Minister to go because he's basically admitted, even though he's not running again, a lot of his colleagues are going to lose their jobs. He still believes in the Liberal agenda. He just doesn't think Prime Minister Trudeau is the person to lead the party. And based on the polling that's come out over the last few months, the vast majority of Canadians agree with that. So what do we do now? The suggestion is a secret ballot. Would they allow that to happen? A secret ballot. The reason that there's calls for a secret ballot is a lot of members of parliament that probably don't like Justin Trudeau, that probably want him to step down, that are hearing it from their constituents and don't know what to tell their own people anymore. They don't want to cross the boss. What happens when somebody crosses the boss in this government? We've seen it happen before. You lose your job. You lose your job. You can be kicked out of the party. You could be kicked out of your plum cabinet position. There's any number of repercussions that could happen. And I don't think that any of these members of parliament want to get involved in that. But if it's a secret ballot, you don't have to worry about those repercussions. You can just vote your conscience. And if the majority of the Liberal caucus does want Trudeau to go, but is too afraid to confront him or say it to his face or to his staff's face, then I guess we have to have a secret ballot. Or we need to start electing people with more balls. We need to start electing people that aren't afraid to tell their boss when their boss is in the wrong and this isn't good for business, so to speak. Really, really bizarre to me that it would come to that, but I don't hate the idea of a secret ballot. All the Liberals, and the public doesn't even need to know what the result is. This is a Liberal Party thing, not a government thing. If all the Liberals want to sit down in a cabinet room or a caucus room and all write down stay or go on a piece of paper, add them up, and the Prime Minister should respect the choice of whatever his caucus members say. He is only at the top of the party governing as Prime Minister because his people got enough of themselves elected that they can form government. So secret ballot, yeah, that's an interesting one. Today is the deadline that the Bloc Québécois gave Justin Trudeau to pass their two pieces of legislation that they wanted implemented, or they're going to start talking to opposition parties to topple the government and force an election. I don't know how far that one's going to go either. People ask me about that all the time. Like, hey, do you think we'll be voting before Christmas? I mean, in theory, we could, but it would take more than the Conservatives and the Bloc to bring down Justin Trudeau. We know that he's not in the supply and confidence agreement with the NDP anymore, but we've also heard the NDP say they have no interest in having an election right now. That is a party that is broke. I don't even know that they could fight a federal election right now. And nearest I can tell, they don't even have all of their candidates in place in all of the different ridings. So don't expect the NDP to jump on board and vote out this government. I tend to think this government is going to last right through Christmas. It'll probably go through most of the winter until at least February. At least February, maybe March. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot closer to spring when we start voting. Either way, we need to know the names of those 13 people, and I'm real curious to see how it's going to play out over the next couple of days. If the Prime Minister does manage to survive a confidence vote, the Liberals and the NDP would have to team up for that to happen. If the Prime Minister survives it, I don't know if he's going to like being Prime Minister this Christmas as much as he's liked it over past Christmases. There's a lot of heat on this guy right now, and people are upset. People are very upset. We had 2 million people go to a food bank last month. Can you believe that? What a sobering thing. 2 million Canadians went to a food bank in 1 month. To me, that's a national crisis. That's a call in the military, spare no expense, do whatever you have to do to make sure these people eat. We can't have 2 million people going to a food bank. One person going to a food bank isn't okay, but food banks aren't set up to support 2 million people in 1 month. I heard an interview with a food bank volunteer just the other day, and she was in tears because she said every time she reached for something to give it to the person who needed it, that was one less thing on the shelf, and they're worried about where food's going to come from. And typically, when our food banks have a need, they come to the people and they say, hey, donations are down. We need help right now. But food banks are in a situation now where they may not even be able to rely on donations from people because everybody is broke right now. It's shocking that this is going on in Canada in 2024. Again, 2 million people used a food bank in 1 month. That is absolutely shocking, and I don't understand why every level of government hasn't prioritized food banks. We're talking about school meal programs. Yeah, I mean, I think it should be needs-based. I don't think just anybody should be able to go and get a free meal at school. But God, I'll tell you, if it's that everybody gets it or nobody gets it, then let's bring it in and give it to the kids who need it. How much longer is it going to take, by the way, to get that off the ground? You know, the government's got a lot of money. Well, they don't have a lot of money. We're actually broke, but they keep printing money for various projects. I don't understand why they don't just say, you know what? Every single food bank that's serving people is going to get $1 million cash by Friday. Go out, buy whatever you need, and make sure that people aren't going hungry. But I don't see any level of government jumping over the desk waiting to help out these food banks. And why is that? What's going on here? If the food bank needs food to give it to people who are starving, because through no fault of their own, our economy has gone to an absolutely horrific place. I mean, we are teetering right on the edge financially in this country. I think we're closer to insolvency than not. I don't understand why we can't help out the food banks. Maybe we have to take some of the projects that the government wants to implement and just put them on hold for a little while. Could we do that? Could we reallocate some of the money that's budgeted for one thing and give it to the food banks? I'd be willing to bet that if we did a survey of Canadians and said, would you rather build a high-speed rail line for somewhere between $80 and $120 billion that will basically run from Laval to Toronto with stops in Montreal, Ottawa, Peterborough, and then Toronto. That's the proposal, by the way. The government's going to roll out that idea soon. If we've got $80 billion to spend on a train that travels at 300 kilometers an hour, could we not just give a couple million to the food banks and make sure that households and people in our neighborhoods, our friends, our colleagues, our coworkers has enough to eat? It shouldn't have come to this, but it has, and we need to support our food banks. And relying on the public to do it now, it's not feasible. Too many people are in a bad way, and they just don't have the same money to give that they once did. So thank you for hearing me out on food banks in particular. I'm passionate about this topic, and you're going to hear Kat and I at various places between now and Christmas trying to raise money and toys and food for people who need it over the holidays. We do that every year, but I'd really like to see our elected individuals take this a lot more seriously. If the food bank needs a bigger location, we should go out and get them a bigger location. Remember when we were running those mass vax clinics and the province was taking over old Rona's and old Home Depot locations so they could get thousands of people in at once? Why don't we do that for food banks? Maybe food banks should be fully funded and staffed with taxpayer money. What a great way to give right back to the people who paid those taxes. Give them the food that they need. If somebody's going to a food bank, it's not because they want to. Chances are it's because they need it. And if somebody needs something in this country, there's nobody left behind. Doesn't matter what your status is, what you used to do or do now, how much money you've got in the bank. If you need food and you're willing to go to a food bank and ask for that help, I think that there should always be a yes on the other end. How much do you need? What can we do for you? And I don't just want to send these people away with just a collection of shit that they can't make into even one healthy meal. I'd like to see some healthier options being presented to these people. We really do need to do this. It takes a political will, and maybe it's not sexy politically, but some level of government has got to step up and give our food banks everything that they need, especially when we now know 2 million people in 1 month went to a food bank. Okay, let's get to something I promised at the beginning of the pod, something a little different. Friend of mine and my longtime mechanic. Let's call Paul here and talk about snow tires.
Hello.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Not bad.
Good. It's Scott.
Yeah, buddy.
Sorry to call you out of the blue. Hey, listen, I was talking about this on the radio today, and I wanted to know, when are we doing snow tires? Is it snow tire season yet? Can I push this till December, January?
No,
What's the deal?
You can't push it to December. You fucking nuts or what, bro?
Okay, so when? Like now? Next week? 2 weeks?
No, yeah, soon. Let's start getting them in. Start getting booked in.
Is a lot of people coming in for tires already? It seems
I'm on
early.
Number 45 already.
45?
45 of my storage.
How many
tires.
How many sets of tires do you do in a day when it's like busy season and everybody's switching over from the all seasons to the winters?
Oh, fuck, dude. I don't know, 20, 30 cars.
A day? Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
cow. Well, you do a great job. I'm not really surprised.
Thanks there, Mr. Scroats.
Don't say that. How have you been, by the way? You're on After 9.
I've been great. Busy as hell, and just go, man, go.
Go, man, go. I like it. What's the best car on the road right now? If you were buying a car, what would you buy?
Oh, Toyota RAV4, Honda CR-V, and any model above that, Lexus, Acura.
So the imported
Those are
ones. Nothing domestic.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, something imported.
Nothing just changed. By the way, just so you know, listening to the pod here, anytime I want to buy a car or anything, Paul has the final say on anything I do because he's inevitably the one who has to fix it when something goes wrong. So,
Hey, how many kilometers you got on that Civic, buddy?
500,000, 480,000.
That's right. And it's still going.
It's still going. It's still going.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll tell you what, if you need your tires changed or something like that, call my friend Paul here at Superior Automotive. It is on Jutland, just east of Kipling in Toronto, and Paul does a great job. How long have I been going to your shop? Like 25 years, I would say, right?
No, 20. I've only been in business for 20, since day one.
Day one. I'm a day one
day
customer,
one.
and I highly recommend
You are.
Superior Automotive. Give my friend Paul here a call. All right, I got to go, Paul. I got to get back to the pod.
All right, brother. Talk to you later, man.
Moving on, we've still got a lot more to get to in this episode of After 9. In fact, I'm going to blow through some news headlines with just a little bit of commentary here, and I'm going to try and touch on all the big topics of today. First off, the results are in for the Saskatchewan provincial election. Premier Scott Moe and the Saskatchewan Party, which is basically the Saskatchewan equivalent of a Conservative Party, won a 5th consecutive majority government last night. Meanwhile, by the way, the polls had that completely wrong. The polls had the NDP winning this one. And the NDP did great in Regina and Saskatoon, but the rest of the province, particularly the rural areas, voted for Premier Moe. Premier Moe, I've always liked them. I don't live in Saskatchewan. I've only been there a handful of times. I've always enjoyed myself when I was there. I don't think a lot of people generally think, hey, we should go to Regina for a vacation. In fact, I don't even know if I recommend it to go for a vacation, but you should certainly go and visit. Real nice place, and the people in Saskatchewan are great. Meanwhile, Elections BC says the votes are finally finished being counted for the most part. There's 2 ridings where there may need to be a judicial recount, but regardless, the results of the October 19th provincial election are in, and they have given Premier David Eby and his New Democrat Party 47 seats. That is just enough to form a majority government in British Columbia. It took 9 days to get the votes counted. 9 days. In comparison, Saskatchewan counted all the votes by hand and had it done in one night. That's always how elections worked. I don't know what happened, what this trend is with election results not coming in on election night, but this really shouldn't be hard. It's basic math. You just have to count. In Saskatchewan, Premier Moe said, hey, you know what? If people are going to have to vote by hand, we owe it to them to count by hand to make sure that there's no electronic errors. Sure enough, they counted by hand. The polls were wrong. The Saskatchewan party won. In BC, it seems to be a very strange system. I didn't know that we were doing phone-in voting. That's a new one for me. I don't know how that works or how you verify that the person voting is who they say they are when it's over the phone. I don't know how they do it, but I'll trust that Elections BC has this figured out. I've heard rumors that some of the ballot boxes were taken home by Elections BC staff. If that happened, I got to ask, why? Why on earth would that happen? You could keep those ballots in any number of secure locations. Take some of those security guards. We're paying out millions of dollars for security across Canada right now. You're telling me we couldn't get some of the security people to just guard the library or City Hall or the legislature where the votes are being held until they're counted? Seems weird, and I'm not doubting the results of the BC election, but I will say it's a terrible look for democracy. Holy cow. There's been enough suspicion surrounding elections in the last 5-6 years that I think people, when they heard what was going on in BC, raised an eyebrow instantly, and it was another dent in the reputation of democracy. It's not supposed to be like that. We shouldn't have to question the results of our election. If people go in and vote, and they prove who they say they are and that they're entitled to vote, they cast their ballot, somebody adds up all the votes, we have a winner. That's how it's supposed to work. It seems to have gotten really confusing and convoluted over the years. And again, I really don't understand why, but that's the end result. They say the BC election is now done. There are, like I said, 2 more recounts that need to be done, but it shouldn't affect the overall outcome. It'll be an NDP government in BC. It'll be a Saskatchewan party government in Saskatchewan. Meanwhile, back in Toronto, the TTC says they're ramping up service as Taylor Swift brings her Eras Tour to the city next month. The TTC says it expects tens of thousands of Swifties to take public transit to get to and from the 6 shows and other related events in the downtown area. They say service and staffing levels will be increased on key routes from November 14th to 16th, and again from the 21st to the 23rd. Staff are also going to be at Union Station after the shows to help control and direct the crowd. Okay, fine. But what am I missing here? What am I missing? Because Taylor Swift is going to do a sold-out show at Rogers Centre. We probably have about 6 to 8 sold-out shows at Rogers Centre every year. She's not doing 6 shows in one night. It's not like there's going to be any more than 50,000 people per night, and we've proven time and time again that we can move people around, even if there's a concert at Budweiser Stage and a concert at the Rogers Centre and a Leaf game down the street at Scotiabank Arena. If you don't know the Toronto area, all of those venues are very close to each other. Even when they're all fully at capacity, we never add more transit. We don't make any real special exceptions here. Maybe the extra staff at Union Station to tell people where their train is. That's about it. I'm surprised that we're doing this with Taylor Swift. It's going to come at an added expense, no doubt. And that's fine. I mean, hey, it's a big event. If it brings people into the city, great. I just don't understand why transit would be an issue for these shows because, again, there's only one of them per night. A community south of Owen Sound, Ontario, has formally decided it's willing to become the site of a deep geological repository for nuclear waste after a referendum narrowly passed. The proposal got 51% support from residents of the municipality of South Bruce, which is being considered, along with the northern town of Ignace, as a site for the network of underground rooms that are going to house millions of bundles of used nuclear fuel. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization has said both local municipalities and the First Nation in those areas are going to have to agree. Town Council in Ignace voted in favor of the proposal in July, while the Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation in Northern Ontario and the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation have not yet made a decision. Great. We should always consult with our First Nations people. And I don't know what they're going to say. I really don't. I'm trying to figure out why anybody voted in favor of this. NIMBY is a real thing, not in my backyard. I can't think of any city that would invite all that nuclear waste to be buried underneath their town. What are they getting for this? If you're an After 9 listener in Owen Sound, Meaford, Saugeen Shores, Southern Georgian Bay, can you just shoot me a note and tell me what they offered you guys? You must be getting something. Something must be on the table for us to be able to dump our used nuclear waste in your community. 51% voted in favor of this, and for more than half to agree on anything, I'm really wondering, why did they vote for it? They didn't just like the idea of nuclear material being underneath them. There had to have been something more, and I just want to know what it is, and then I can make a proper assessment on whether or not this is a good deal. Right now, like I said, that seems like you're just willing on trouble. I also don't know what the byproducts are of nuclear waste. I assume there's going to be radiation involved here. I assume this is going to be a fairly complex operation and that the roads to and from these areas are going to be filled with trucks dropping off nuclear waste. Is that how it works? Is it like a dump? How far underground are you guys going? Is it safe if it's buried that far underground? I have a lot of questions. I would like to get some answers. And when I do, I will bring them to you here on After 9. Apple is in the news for a couple of different reasons. They've rolled out a software update to inject the first dose of AI into the iPhone lineup. The free new update is going to activate AI in iPhone 15 and 16 models, as well as recent versions of the iPad and MacBook computers. However, older iPhones, they don't have the right chip that's needed to power AI. For now, the update is only available for iPhones in the US. Canada and other countries are going to get the update sometime next year. Why is that? There's not a lot of difference between Canadians and Americans. Why is it that the States get stuff first? Is there a legal reason for that? I don't know. The other iPhone news, though, is really, really good news. Apple's wireless headphones can now be turned into a hearing aid. The US FDA approved the software. The hearing aid feature is available on AirPod Pro 2 models and starts with built-in tests to help users determine if they have hearing loss. Yesterday's software update enabling the hearing aid app is so far, again, only being rolled out in America. There's a lot of people that probably don't even know they need a hearing aid. There's a lot. Same thing with glasses, though. You don't really know you need glasses until you try glasses on and realize, oh, shit, I can see a lot better. Well, this is basically the same thing. I think this is going to help out a lot of people. There's a lot of people, and no, hearing aids are not just for old people. There's a lot of people who do have hearing difficulties, and hopefully this will make their lives a little bit easier. The Washington Post has reportedly lost more than 200,000 subscribers following a decision announced last week to not endorse a candidate in the presidential race. That's according to a report from NPR, which cited two people at the paper that said they had knowledge of internal matters. The Post would not comment on NPR's story or discuss the lost subscriptions. Jeff Bezos, the guy behind Amazon, owns the Washington Post. He had a real great article yesterday. In fact, Elon Musk himself congratulated him on the new editorial position of the Washington Post. I think most of the readers of the Post were fully expecting that they would endorse Kamala Harris, and they do. Usually they do. This time, though, they said no. And Bezos said, in a nutshell, I'm going to paraphrase here, listen, there's a lot of distrust in the mainstream media right now. Endorsing candidates doesn't help. It's a very polarizing thing. It looks to me like Jeff Bezos kind of wants to take the Post in a different direction where it's a lot less commentary and it's a lot more news. They're going to continue on with their investigative journalism, but I think what most people would like, and most people have noticed now is missing from most of our mainstream media, is an unbiased opinion. I'll give you an example of a newspaper, but not necessarily the Washington Post. Back in the day, they had news reporters that would write a news story, and you could write it and get all the details on that story that you needed from reading that story in an unbiased way. If you wanted an opinion on those stories, and some of these columnists were very valuable to their newspapers because there were so many people that woke up every day and said, oh, can't wait to read Brian Lilly's column on this. Can't wait to read whoever's column on that. Now, with far less people in the newsroom, some of those columnists who are still there are essentially writing the news. And they write it with the same bias that they always did. And there was never anything wrong with an opinion piece being published in a newspaper. The problem is when opinion replaces the news, then people are not getting an unbiased opinion and being given the opportunity to form their own opinion. So much distrust in the mainstream media right now. And I don't know if this is going to help or hurt, but yesterday, our federal regulators gave Google an exemption to the Online News Act. That means Google will pay news outlets in Canada $100 million a year for the next 5 years. A statement from News Media Canada says it's now time for Facebook and Instagram's parent company to do the same. The group argues Meta's social media platforms are more valuable with real news produced by real journalists. That being said, Meta seems to be fine. They don't seem to be functioning with any disability right now without that Canadian news content. It's been blocked on their platforms for so long now, I don't even know if people expect to see news stories on Facebook or Instagram anymore. They used to be shared there, and it's not anymore. That's all been blocked. It's now that we've got Google paying legacy media or traditional media, I'm wondering if that's going to help or hurt. I'm also wondering if Google, since they're going to pay $100 million a year to companies like the parent company that owns our show, I'd kind of like to know, is there a higher expectation? I wouldn't just give over $100 million for anything without a few strings attached. Maybe this is an opportunity to reset the relationship with the media. Maybe Google's going to say, hey, listen, if you guys want your news stories on our platform, which they are, Google has been great, then maybe, just maybe, you guys should tweak a little bit of what you do. Maybe you should have an editorial board that makes decisions about how you want things to flow out of your news outlet. Something's got to be done to rebuild the trust, and right now, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of trust in that mainstream media. We are 1 week away from the U.S. presidential election. Next Tuesday, America votes. The other day, there was a huge rally at Madison Square Garden in New York City. I talked about it yesterday on the pod. One thing I didn't address, because I didn't fully understand the story yesterday, and I don't want to talk about something that I'm not well read on, was there was a comedian who went up, and he made some pretty brutal jokes about Puerto Rico. And I know there's a lot of people, mainly people, or a lot of them of Puerto Rican descent, who were wildly offended. And they're saying now that shit should have never happened at a Donald Trump rally, and they don't support Donald Trump anymore because that happened. Now, Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance, I don't even know if they were in the building at the time. They said they hadn't seen that stand-up routine, and I don't even know why they thought to do a stand-up routine in the middle of a 6-hour rally. If anyone at the Trump campaign is listening right now, people have got like a max 2-hour attention span. Maximum. Doing a 6-hour rally doesn't really help. You guys probably could have pared that back to Trump, Vance, Musk, maybe Tucker Carlson, and a few others, and it would have been fine. But this comedian is stealing all the headlines because of the jokes he made about Puerto Rico. I heard an interesting perspective on this, and it's from someone that I did not expect to have a good perspective on this, Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart is a legend for The Daily Show. And he doesn't do The Daily Show daily anymore. He turned it over to Trevor Noah. And then when this election cycle came on, he came back to doing it just once a week. He talked about Trump and this comedian and the Puerto Ricans. And this is what he had to say. This is Jon Stewart. Give it a listen.
Raise the alarms.
The opening act, grabbing headlines for all the wrong reasons. A comedian who offered unfunny, racist, cringeworthy jokes.
Basically calling Puerto Ricans trash.
The most repulsive racial jokes about Latinos.
Disgusting and hateful.
So incredibly.
Now, obviously, in retrospect, having a roast comedian come to a political rally a week before Election Day and roasting a key voting demographic, probably not the best decision by the campaign politically. But to be fair, the guy's really just doing what he does. I mean, here he is at the Tom Brady roast a few months ago.
The great Jeff Ross, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff is so Jewish, he only watches football for the coin toss. Gronk, you look like the Nazi that kept burning himself on the ovens. Kevin is so small that when his ancestors picked cotton, they called it deadlifting.
Yes, of course. Terrible, boo, yes. There's something wrong with me. I find that guy very funny. So, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, bringing him to a rally and have him not do roast jokes, that'd be like bringing Beyonce to a rally and not have... Oh.
Jon Stewart's a legend. And yeah, there he is. He's sticking up for the comedian. I think I don't know if you're going to see much more of him. Not after that. There's a lot of people that were right pissed off at that. Either way, perspective is everything. And yeah, it was probably a serious mistake to bring a roast comedian to a political rally, especially if you weren't going to check what it was he was saying. But nonetheless, he was a comedian doing what comedians do. I don't agree with the message. I don't agree with any of it, but I can certainly appreciate comedy. And in context, he was doing a stand-up comedy routine. Right or wrong, it probably shouldn't have been at that rally. I think everybody can agree on that. Speaking of this election, we're about, like I said, we're a week away now. Another person that I certainly did not expect to be on this side is Chris Cuomo. You might remember Chris from CNN. I think that was his main gig. He's evolved a little bit as he does his own thing, and he did a really good video yesterday. It's about 55 seconds long, and Chris is going to explain to you why the mood in America is the way it is right now.
You got to stop thinking that the people who support Trump are like Trump, that they speak like Trump, that they act like Trump. They don't. They want to hire Trump to do a dirty job. They want him to be a virus to the political corpus. They want him to disrupt, to destroy, to demean those that they disrespect and dislike, the system that they distrust and despise. They want someone to do what they believe has been done to them and that they cannot do themselves. That's why they don't care that he exhibits terrible behavior, because they're putting him into a terrible place. If you're sending somebody into the jungle, do you really care if they're a savage? You see what I'm saying? And you have to understand it that way. You may not agree, you may not accept, you may not like, but that's what it is.
Wow. Very, very interesting video and an interesting perspective, too. I hadn't thought of it like that, but I love all different perspectives, particularly when it comes to stuff like this. I know we are getting down to time if we're not over already, so I'm going to do two more stories. Number one, a Polish radio station says it has ended an experiment that involved using AI-generated presenters. I guess that's what in Europe they call radio DJs presenters. This is instead of real journalists. And the move sparked an outcry across Poland. Weeks after letting their journalists go off radio. What an interesting name for a radio station. Usually you want it to be on radio. But Off Radio Krakow relaunched last week using virtual characters created by AI as its presenters. Across Poland, people were angry, expressing fears that humans were being replaced by AI. The station's editor said in a statement yesterday, the goal was to spark a debate about artificial intelligence, and they succeeded. He said it was meant to last 3 months, but there is no point in continuing. I don't think there was any point in doing. I get it. There's a lot of people namely the ones who stand to either really benefit in their career or really benefit financially, that are real excited about AI. The rest of the public, the regular folks, the middle-class people that live in your neighborhoods and maybe work in the same type of industry that you do, for the most part, people are still worried about AI. This is still very, very new technology. This radio station trying to jump all over it, I don't think most people see that as an experiment. I think they thought they could get away with it. They thought, you know what? We're paying 5 different presenters here a full-time salary, and we don't need to do that because we can just tell AI to generate a script, and then we can use a different AI program to create the voice, and bam, we got ourselves a radio show. No one will notice. No one will care. I'm sure that that's where this is going. I have no doubt that that is where we are eventually going to be. But you got to walk before you can crawl. AI is not perfect. I've experimented with it a few times, trying to see if it could make my job easier, writing news, for example, or researching stories that I want to talk about. I haven't had a whole heck of a lot of work, a whole heck of a lot of luck. I've had real mixed results, some of it good, some of it bad. A lot of it, they haven't figured out how to replicate the way I write anyway, or the way I talk. Not in a setting like this versus the radio show. So there's still a lot of work to do on AI before we get to a point where we're replacing radio presenters with AI. Not to mention, the one thing that AI can't do and likely won't be able to do, not in our lifetime anyway, is display emotion and empathy. I don't think AI would be able to do an impassioned speech about the food bank like I did earlier in this episode. I don't think AI can speak from experience about how many people are suffering right now because AI doesn't have the ability to suffer. You know, when I see my neighbor out on her porch crying because she doesn't know how she's going to pay her rent pay her mortgage payment at the end of the month, that's something that I take deeply personally, and I hurt for her. My first instinct is, how can I help you? AI doesn't have that. And that's still one of the magical things that makes radio, in particular, an amazing medium. You know, we live in a world that is so visual right now. So visual. Hey, look at this or watch this. Radio still can't do that. Radio is still a listen experience. And while podcasts and radio are really starting to get very, very similar, there's still something special about waking up and getting in the car and throwing that radio on first thing in the morning. You want to hear what the weather's going to be like, maybe a laugh or two, hear your favorite song, and then get started with your day. I don't know that AI is ever going to be able to replicate that. I don't know how long it'll take, if it eventually can. But either way, radio is still a very human-driven thing. I'm glad this radio station in Poland did this, and I'm glad they canceled the experiment right away. I'd like to think they canceled it because they realized something was missing. Now, they canceled it because they got a lot of complaints. Either way, it's over, but I think they really got to focus on the people in radio a lot more than they do currently because this is going down the wrong road, and I know there is going to be radio programmers and shareholders out there that think this is great. We're going to replace all those people on the radio, and we're going to save a ton of money. I don't think you're going to replace them. You may be able to have something there in its place, but it's not a replacement, quote unquote. And the last one, Sean Diddy Combs is accused in one of 2 new lawsuits that were filed yesterday. By the way, I'm going to do a disclaimer on this one. This one is a real shitty story. God damn it. 2 lawsuits filed Monday of drugging and sexually assaulting a 10-year-old boy in a New York City hotel room back in 2005. The second lawsuit accuses Diddy of a similar assault against a 17-year-old would-be contestant on the reality TV series Making the Band in 2008. The lawsuits filed in state Supreme Court in New York are the latest in a wave of lawsuits in which accusers allege they were sexually assaulted by Combs at parties and meetings over the last 2 decades. Combs' lawyers denied the 2 new claims Monday and accused the plaintiff's lawyer, Anthony Busby, who also represents other accusers in earlier lawsuits, of simply seeking publicity. What a horribly dishonest way to blow off an actual victim. I'll tell you the details. I'll tell you what's in this accusation. This 10-year-old was apparently somehow ended up at Diddy's hotel. It was auditioning or something like that. And they gave him a drink. And as we've heard from many of the other accusations, the drink was laced with drugs. So apparently, this kid started to feel a little woozy. That's when Diddy came in and undid his pants. And he tried to force this kid to perform some stuff on him. I'm not going to say what it is because, God, it's gross. He wanted him to do something to Diddy. And the kid said, no, I'm not doing it. Then the kid, as the drugs got further into his system, passed out. When he woke up, his pants were undone, and he had pain in his backside because he had been penetrated. Diddy's just denying this ever happened? I guess he has a right to until there's a trial. You're innocent until proven guilty, even if you're a piece of shit. These are the kind of accusations and allegations against Diddy and other people in his inner circle. You know, I mean, if you heard the Diddy stuff and thought, the freak-offs, hey, they had a bunch of orgies with drugs, whatever. They're adults. If they want to do it, fine. It wasn't just adults. There was a lot of kids that were implicated here. There was a lot of young people that were taken advantage of and exploited and assaulted and God only knows what else. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's still 80-plus lawsuits just like this that still have to be filed. We're going to hear a lot of really, really gross stuff that's coming out of this Diddy thing over the next little while. But I hope that this is going somewhere, namely in justice for the victims and also in rooting out whoever else was involved, whether they enabled it, whether they participated in it. Who was the one getting these kids? How did Diddy get so many underage kids in hotel rooms? Who gave him the drugs to drug these people with? All things that still need to come out. Diddy's trial doesn't begin until May the 5th, 2025. There's a long time between now and then for more of these allegations to come out. And as always, I'll say they are allegations because it's innocent until proven guilty. But either way, justice has got to be done here, and everybody who's involved, again, whether it was enabling it, participating in it, supplying for it, if you were the person, the human trafficker who was getting the kids for him, if you helped cover it up, justice is coming. And I really, really hope justice gets done. We will stay on this Diddy story, by the way, because a lot of people message and say, hey, I don't really hear about this in any other places. So thank you for staying up to date on the story. As horrible as the details are, as hard as it is to hear, this has actually been going on. This is someone that we were led to believe should be on a pedestal. We should respect Diddy. Oh, he's the king. He's on his game. He's Mr. Sean John. He's Mr. Ciroc. He's Mr. Hip Hop. He's garbage, is what he is. To put it bluntly, anyway. All right, I think we covered a lot of ground in this episode, everybody. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Like I said earlier, Kat is going to be back on Thursday. If you want to discuss anything you heard in this episode of After 9, I'm all ears. I don't pretend to be right about everything. My opinion is my opinion. You're welcome to yours. And if you want to talk it out or debate it, by all means, slide into the DMs at Scott Fox on Air, or you can text our text line 1-833-915-SHOW 7469. Have yourselves a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.
Well, guys, we're just a few days away from Halloween. Although it's going to be tough for things to get scarier than yesterday's 6-hour Trump rally at Madison Square Garden. Yep, Trump's rally was described as unhinged, crude, and racist, as opposed to the stable, polite, and tolerant Trump rallies we're accustomed to. Yet the rally was called unhinged, crude, and racist. Trump heard and was like, you could have just said on brand. Well, Election Day is just a week away, and a new report found that Americans are changing their vacation plans due to election anxiety. Yep, people are waiting till after the election so they know whether to buy a round trip or a one-way.